My guest today is John Lee Dumas, also known as JLD. He is the founder and host of the award-winning podcast Entrepreneurs on Fire. Past guests include Tony Robbins, Barbara Corcoran, and Gary Vaynerchuk. With over 1 million monthly listens and over 1 million total listens of his 3,000 plus episodes, JLD is spreading the entrepreneurial fire on a global scale. John has also created Podcaster's Paradise, an exclusive membership community with everything you need to create, grow, and monetize your podcast. In this episode, we learn as much as we can about JLD in the short time we're together, and then we dive into his newest offering, his latest book called The Common Path to Uncommon Success. This book is based on thousands of interviews from his highly acclaimed podcasts. It walks you through a revolutionary 17-step roadmap which provides a proven path for entrepreneurs like you to achieve financial freedom, location, and lifestyle freedom you are capable of. Let the common path of uncommon success show you how. Please go to uncommonsuccessbook.com today to pre-order your copy, and you'll receive 5 amazing bonuses as well. Now enjoy this short conversation with John Lee Dumas. Okay, I want to welcome my guest today, Mr. John Lee Dumas. I've been so excited to have this interview with him. And as you will find out, he is the king of podcasting and many other businesses. And I'm almost a year away from my anniversary of starting this podcast. My first episode was April 2nd. So nothing could be more fitting than to have this amazing person on the podcast. John, welcome, man.
Joe, thank you for the kind words, brother. It is much appreciated. I'm excited to be here, and congrats on a year.
Thank you. I had a little lull. We went on a 28-day trip, and so I couldn't record during that period of time. But I'm back.
If you were my mentee, we would have had you all booked out, brother. You would have gotten all your episodes done beforehand. They would have been scheduled to go out on cue. You never would have missed a release date.
The other day, I was listening how you say you actually do all of yours in one day, right? So you're done for the week.
One day. One day. Batch them, go all in, crush it. And, we go on 75 to 90 day world trips, every single year. So on those, I'll do like a month of just batch recording so that when I'm gone, it's all scheduled.
We're really going to talk about the release of the book because I'm super excited for my copy because I pre-ordered. I listened to your interview with Hal Elrod. And so I was in the gym. I had my Apple Watch on. I was listening to the podcast and I said, oh man, he's got a book. Okay. Yeah. So rushed home, pre-ordered, looking forward to all the other stuff and the bonuses. But if you don't mind, can I ask you some questions first? And then the rest of the time we can talk about what the book's about and all of that other stuff.
Absolutely, man. Value first.
Beautiful. Okay. So first of all, I wanted to thank you for your service. I know you were a tank commander, right? 13 months as a tank commander and 8 years in the Army.
Yeah, 8 years in the Army. A few years as a tank commander, but specifically during my 13-month tour of duty in Iraq, I was a tank commander in charge of 4 tanks, 16 men. So that was some pretty intense time, I can tell you.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. So thank you for that. It was really unique to listen to the story of how you became who you are today. And it was the whole driving in the car. You ran out of podcasts. It's just an epic story. And the part about it for me is, how did you choose when we talk about creating a podcast and being very focused on what your avatar is and what your audience is? How did you end up choosing giving to the world of entrepreneurs when, in fact, at that time you weren't? You were actually working for, quote, the man, right?
So for me, it was all about, listen, I know from reading the business books that I'm the average of the 5 people I spend the most time with. And I looked around, Joe, at that time in my life, and I said, my 5 sucks. Like, they're not evil people, but they're Don Doolittles, they're Debbie Downers. They're just, not trying to motivate or inspire anybody. They're just kind of on this, kind of miserable trajectory in life. And I said, that's my average. That's who I am too, because I'm the average of these people. So how do I fix that? And that's when I discovered podcasting and listening to podcasts and surrounding myself with the right people, even if I was just a listener, just like you know, at the gym, listening to those earbuds. Hal and myself, we were part of your 5 that day, brother, because you spent some quality time with us. And your average went up as a result, because obviously Hal's a fantastic individual. And, you know, I try pretty hard too. And that was happening to me as a listener of podcasts. And I said, well, how can I take it maybe into the next level and be the host that's asking those questions? Like that could be cool. And I would maybe even be getting closer to these people that I admire so much by having one-on-one conversations with them. And it was a fantastic journey. You know, I was such a bad podcaster when I started. I mean, I'm sure you can go back to episode 1 of yourself, Joe, and be like, ooh, I've definitely improved since then, because that's what we do. Shockingly, we get a little bit better when we actually start doing the thing over and over again. You know, not all of us take 28 days off to go on a vacation, but, you know, even when you do, you can still get a little bit better at stuff. And that was my journey, man. Now, as we're talking, 3,000 episodes, over 100 million listens, over 1.4 million monthly listens of the podcast, and just getting started.
Yeah, it's incredible. And so when you first started, how did you record your interviews? Because now we've obviously gotten to the world of Zoom, and some people are using the video portion like I am to also put to the YouTube channel. There's some people that just won't listen to podcasts, right? So there's both audience. But how did you do it when you first started? I'm just wondering what went through the process of thinking about all of this.
So I recorded episode 1 the exact same way I recorded episode 3001. You give me your Skype ID, we jump on Skype, audio only, and we record the interview. That's how I've done every single episode. Audio only, Skype to Skype, making it happen. So listen, we're all creatures of habits. Skype works for me. I've always used it.
All right, well, cool. You're not interested in doing video and then repurposing it for like your YouTube channel? You just strictly podcast? Focus,
baby. Follow one course until success. I know what I do best, and that's audio only interviews, and that's how I roll.
Let's take me for example. I love what you do, and I am struggling with, when I started this podcast, I didn't know what it was going to be, and I own an entertainment booking agency. I went to music school. Was my life, and I didn't want that to be what my podcast was about, because I've been an entrepreneur since the early 90s. I like being around these type of people. You, Dean Graziosi, Tony Robbins, Hal Elrod. So my focus is definitely going in the direction of being an entrepreneur and having those people. Is it too crowded of a podcast market to be another person interviewing entrepreneurs?
100% yes. It truly is. 100%. Listen, I run Podcasters Paradise. I interview the world's most successful entrepreneurs for my podcast, Entrepreneurs on Fire. But my course, my community, Podcasters Paradise, is all about people that join every single day. They're joining from somewhere around the world with a goal of launching their podcast, to create their podcast, to launch their podcast, to grow and to monetize. And the very first thing I tell every single one of them is, why would you want to launch a weak, pale imitation of somebody else's podcast that's already out there in the world, when you could instead look in the mirror and say, I've lived a life. What unique skill sets do I have? What real value can I provide to the world? And then when you can answer this question, Joe, this is your podcast, which is, what is the one solution that I can provide to my audience that is the number one solution in the world? If you could answer that question about something that you do or something that you're passionate about or something that fires you up, and you can create the number one solution to a real problem in this world, that podcast will win. When the 1034th podcast is launched that tries to copy Entrepreneurs on Fire or School of Greatness or Achieve Your Goals podcast, that podcast will lose, because you're bringing nothing new to the world. You're bringing no new value to the world. And frankly, your shows, and I'm not talking specifically to you, Joe, I'm talking to the listeners who are looking to create their thing. That show is not going to be as good as the other ones I mentioned. So why would people listen to that show when they only have so much time in this world? So how can you be that individual that looks in the mirror and says, I can solve one problem better than anybody else, this is what I'm going all in on. Because that's what the world wants. The world wants the best solution to a real problem, not the second best, not the 10th best, the best solution to a real problem. Those people win at a very high level. It's step one of this book, by the way, which I know we're going to get into more details later. But step one, I get you there. I tell you and I teach you and I show you how to get to your big idea, not somebody else's big idea, your big idea, the idea that's deep within you that you probably have never even thought about or uncovered, but it's there. Let me help you get it there. Because back in 2012, Joe, my big idea was a podcast. That would have failed. So I went down a niche into a business podcast. That would have failed too. There's hundreds of those. I went down a third niche to a business podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. There were 7 currently that were doing that. Did I want to be the 8th best podcast interviewing entrepreneurs? Of course not. That would have failed even back in 2012 when there was just a handful of them. So I said, what can I be the best solution to a real problem? Well, what's the biggest problem that I find with these 7 podcasts that are interviewing entrepreneurs? They all come out once a week. That's not enough content for me. I'm at the gym like Joe every single day. I am driving to work. I'm walking my dog. I need a fresh episode waiting for me every single day. That doesn't exist in the business podcast world, interviewing entrepreneurs. I'm going to become the first daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. So guess what, Joe? The day that I launched Entrepreneurs on Fire, it was the best daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. It was the worst daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. It was the only daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. But guess what? It was the best solution to a real problem. Those people like me, by the way, that needed more content, that needed a daily dose of inspiration. That's why Entrepreneurs on Fire won.
And it's funny because you chose the format of a half-hour length. And I would assume it was because you were doing it every day. So it would be really hard to go into post-production and do all of that audio editing and everything else with it and have it be longer than a half hour. But then
you're true. And you actually kind of stumbled onto another truth is video is a whole nother layer. I mean, that's larger files. Editing's even harder. You've actually got to like sit here and like nod and smile when people are talking to you, which kind of seems funny, but bro, it is massive bandwidth compared to like this video not being on right now and me being able to kind of like listen to you. I'm still listening, of course. I'm interviewing you, but just like sip my coffee, kind of close my eyes, maybe rub my eyeballs a little bit, do some stretching back here, not have to try to make eye contact with you and just nodding like this, like you're having to do when I talk. Like, that's all great. Video's got all of its pros, but doing a 7-day-a-week show of that, forget about it. That's why I did the audio.
But you stuck with a half an hour since you started. Is it just who you are? Is it the way you're wired that did it come from your military training? You just have stuck. You picked a plan, you stuck with it. You stayed as a half an hour podcast this entire time. You never veered off and said, oh, now I'll do a 1 hour here and there. Every single one of yours is right on the money. It's like you cut it right off at 30 minutes.
That's not true. If you go to my podcast feed right now, you will see that, some podcasts are 17 minutes. Some are 23. Let's actually go live time right now. I'm going to go ahead and click on my podcast right now. 33, 25, 27, 25, 29, 28, 22, 30, 37, 40, 28, 23. Those are my last 15 episodes. I just ripped them off right there. That was right from my podcast feed. So for me, I definitely use 30-ish minutes as a goal. That's kind of what I kind of tell people. Yeah, let's take about 30 minutes is kind of my response when people ask how long it's going to take. But I'm a big believer in every podcast should be as long as it should be. And some of them should be 22 minutes. Some of them should be 43 minutes. And that's why you see those differing timeframes, because I'm not actually trying to squeeze anything into a strict time frame. I have the approximate thing that I know that works. And what I really do is have 4 to 6 bullet points I want to get to for each interview. And that's how it happens. It happens to be typically between 20 to 40 minutes is like the safe bet. We'll be somewhere in that range. More likely than not, within the 25 to 35 minute range. That's kind of the tighter range that we do have. So, although we do have a lot of shows that are really close to that 30-minute mark, it's definitely not a Bible.
Got it. So Your new book, The Common Path to Uncommon Success. On your website, I went through your big idea exercise. And it was funny because we were just talking about that. Like, in order to come up with the solution I can give to the world that makes me the top podcast in that realm. And I went through it, and I've gone through things like that before, but I struggled taking the left column and bringing the line over to the right column and making all of these things compare to come up with that idea. Even though you gave time limits to it, I feel like I had to keep going back and doing it. And I'm not sure that's the right way, but you say you go through that in the book, correct?
Absolutely. It's a process. It is, a system, and there are exercises behind it on how you can identify your big idea. So like you mentioned, we have timers, we have processes, there's arrows that are being drawn. You're going to look down and you're going to be like, what have I just created down here? And you will get to your big idea. For many of you, for the first time in your life.
Let's talk about the book and who it's for, what the end result of it is supposed to be for anyone that reads it, when it's coming out. And I know there's a bunch of bonuses if they pre-order. I just want to go through all of this and get the word out there. I'm super excited for my copy.
Thanks, Joe. I said. Number one, I appreciate your pre-order. Thank you, because pre-orders make or break book launches. So I'm very grateful for that. And what this book is, to really answer your full question, is it is a culmination of the 3,000 plus interviews that I've now done over the past decade with the world's most successful entrepreneurs. And I've been a mentee to those 3,000 mentors, learning from every single one of them over these interviews, applying it to my business, which, by the way, is now a multi-million-dollar business for 8 years in a row. So I've applied a lot of those principles very successfully. And I've been able to take those thousands and thousands of hours of conversations, boil them down into what I've found are these 17 core foundational principles that every successful entrepreneur has in common. 17. I looked down and I said, that's a roadmap. This is a 17-step, step-by-step roadmap to financial freedom and fulfillment. This is the book I have to write. So I sat down over all of our little quarantine of 2020, and for 8 months in a row, the first 2 hours of every day, I just wrote and wrote and wrote. And it turned out that in 480 writing hours, I was able to compile 71,000 words, 273 pages of what comprise this book I'm holding in my hands right now. It is The Common Path to Uncommon Success. It is a 17-step roadmap to your financial freedom and fulfillment. So if that sounds like something that you want, if it sounds like this is a journey you want to embark upon, this is the process to do it, this book. Now, let me warn you, the road is hard. This is filled with exercises, and there are examples, and there's a companion course that comes with this for free, but it's work. Like, it is work, and it is hard. Because guess what? It is hard building a business that you love and that's successful. It is hard to create content that you really know is meaningful content. It is hard sharing your voice, your message, and your mission with the world. These things are hard. But you know what's also hard? Being broke, living paycheck to paycheck, waking up every single day, not really excited about what lies ahead, like being miserable. That's hard too. And I've lived that life as well. So my call to action for people that are watching this right now is choose your hard. Like, which hard do you want to choose? Because it's both paths are hard. Whether you take the common path to uncommon success and get to that financial freedom and fulfillment, that's hard. It's also hard being broke and not being able to support your loved ones and not living up to the dreams that you know you have and you can achieve, but not doing it. That's hard too. So choose your hard. And my recommendation, choose the common path to uncommon success. This book's going to get you there in 17 steps. I've also compiled 5 amazing bonuses for those action takers who pre-order the book. So before March 23rd, when the book goes live, I'm going to ship all 3 of my journals, the Freedom, Mastery, the podcast journal. I'm going to ship to your door. Literally, I'm shipping these to your door for free on my own dime. I am shipping you these 3 journals for free if you live in the United States. For those people outside, I'm going to email you the beautiful digital packs of all 3 of these journals. There's 4 other amazing bonuses. And you can find those at uncommonsuccessbook.com. When you go there, you'll see endorsements from Gary Vaynerchuk, Seth Godin, Erica Mandy, Dory Clark, Neil Patel. You will see the first chapters there for free. You can read it and you can see like my writing style. There's a video of me jumping into the pool with all my clothes on, describing more details about the book. And again, you get to see all 5 bonuses there. And then of course you can pre-order uncommonsuccessbook.com. Joe, brother, thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, man, this is awesome. I appreciate your time. I hope to have you back once I figure out what it is that I'm going to do. And
your 2-year anniversary. Let's do this.
Okay. And hopefully I'll have this all aligned and everything. But
listen, nothing you're doing is without reason. I mean, every time you do this, you're getting better at your craft. You're improving, you're building connections, relationships, you're honing your skills. And so when that thing does come up, boom, you're off to the races.
When we reconnect and we do this, that I can hold up the book and say, this was my aha moment. This is what turned it around for me. This is what made me actually finally figure out what my big idea was. So that's really what I hope comes out of that for me. And I'm not a spring chicken, so I'm figuring this out sort of late. But
hey, even though I've got a little more hair than you, I'm not a spring chicken either. I'm well into my 40s.
I hit 60 next year. So
yeah, you look good, bro.
So I'm in trouble if I don't get this going soon. So, well, I really appreciate your time so much. And I wish you all the best with the book. And again, it's The Common Path to Uncommon Success. I'll have all the links in the show notes. I'll have all the links on the YouTube video when I put that out in a few days. And I'll make sure I put it on social media. And I really do wish you the most success with this.
Thanks, Joe.
I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I want to thank you for listening to my podcast. I know you have many options to listen to various podcasts, and I'm honored that you chose to listen to mine. I would love it if you would rate my podcast 5 stars and write a nice review. It really helps to bring up the rankings of the podcast to other listeners. Once again, thank you so much for listening to The Joe Costello Show. I appreciate you very much.